Imagine this scenario. You're a businessman. Let's just pretend you're skilled enough to be someone like that, from New York, United States, and you plan a video chat call with colleagues who work internationally on the 29th of October. The colleagues happen to be from Germany. They tell you that they are only available to work at 18 their time. You remember from working with them before that New York is behind Germany by 6 hours. So you technically calculate that the time of a call would be at 12. That turns out to be convenient for you, because on the 29th, you'll only have free time to talk at 12. The day of the video chat arrives, and you wait patiently at 12 to receive a call from your colleagues. Nothing. You send a message asking why the call wasn't happening, to which your colleagues respond with, well, it's in 1 hour. Why are you asking us? In 1 hour? What are you talking about? You double check the math you've done with the time, but it all seems correct. You ask if they've made any mistakes with planning on their part, to which they respond back with, are you aware that we switched clocks yesterday? Maybe your phone didn't switch back. Maybe that's a problem. The answer confuses you. You've been to different meetings in New York already. Every single one of them had a planned date, and you were always on time. And in fact, the time in New York didn't change. It didn't change in the entirety of the United States. However, it did change in the majority of countries in Europe. On the night of 28th of October, in 2018, many European countries, Germany included, ended daylight saving time. However, the United States ended daylight saving time on the 4th of November, a week later. This is the case of time zones and daylight saving time. The Case Off is going to be a new series by me, where I basically throw around my opinions. In many cases, it's just me using YouTube videos to dump my opinions, but me making videos doesn't mean you can't challenge my opinions. If you feel like you have a point or a counter argument against what I've said, feel free to comment it below. Time zones are one of those things pretty much everyone is confused about. Everyone seems to have a favorite time zone, which almost always happens to be their own. They try to defend their time zone while probably not knowing much about time zones at the same time. So I won't go over how time zones formed because there's many videos that explain that. What I will talk about is the quirks time zones brought with themselves. Let's start with the most obvious one. In a perfect world, countries would split the world every 15 degrees of longitude, where every 15 degrees, let's say east, means the area is 1 hour ahead of the prior 15 degrees. However, in the real world, that's far from the case, because the old grumpy men in charge of the government in countries of the world choose their own time zone that often doesn't reflect the 15 degrees splits. By the way, extra respect to countries that to reach time zone accuracy actually set their time zone to the nearest half or quarter of an hour. Many people find it weird, but if your country is very small and doesn't directly fall clearly to the nearest hour, you can set the time zone to the nearest half hour or even quarter of an hour, and that would be quite accurate for timekeeping. Keeping time zones the way they are right now gets confusing quickly, because if a programmer wants to make something that included a time zone and conversion, it would be a nightmare. Because they have to find every single country and every single time zone they have, incorporate it into the thing they're making, and probably still get something wrong because time zones change rapidly. But what about daylight saving time? Daylight saving time was proposed to give people more daylight and reduce energy consumption during summers. Let's leave the energy consumption part for later, while I discuss the moral argument of daylight saving time to give people more daylight. What the fuck are you guys talking about? Okay, so the point of this is that since you end work, you have more daylight? Why not just move the entire schedule 1 hour behind? Why does everyone have to suffer from sleep deprivation? Because your arbitrary work schedule makes you want to see more of a bright shining spot in the fucking sky. Okay, let's discuss this point from all sides. Humans choose to sleep at certain times, and work at different times. That's good. Then with the introduction of companies who have specific timetables for when people work, schedules were introduced, which means you have to be at work during very specific times. So schedules are human-made. Why is it important? Because timekeeping is also human-made. We decide how to timekeep. After all, it wasn't nature who decided to have daylight saving time. The difference between schedules and timekeeping is that one is local to probably you and maybe your colleagues, and the other is global, on a huge scale. To illustrate my point, let's look at a standard date cycle right before daylight saving time starts in my city. Nearly every place on Earth will have such time at some point, unless you are super close to the equator or are in the polar circle. The sun rises at 6 on this day, and you'd probably say, "Who the hell would wake up at 6? Let's move it to be 7. At least more people would wake up at that time to, quote-unquote, enjoy more sunlight, right?" Right, so because you, of all people, you want more sunlight, instead of trying to adjust your sleep schedule to make you sleep at the time when it's dark and wake up when it's just sunrise, instead of doing that, you want to shove down everyone's throats a specific time to wake up to change, so that you ruin sleep schedules, even for people who don't give a flying fuck about sunlight. Right now, you might be confused about me saying that people don't care about more sunlight. Why am I saying that? I don't think anyone would disagree that the internet and huge recent growth on technology, like computers and phones, greatly impacted our lives. If this discussion rose like 50 years ago, when the internet wasn't a thing and popular lifestyles were greatly different, I wouldn't be sitting in a dull room like I am right now and recording this video. One of the unfortunate sides of technology is the huge rise in loneliness and human isolation, which plays a big role in the daylight saving time argument. Loneliness is such a big topic that I'm not going to cover its attributes and implementations in this video, but I will say that there is a rising amount of people that are probably going to get used to it, find it as an advantage, and look for ways to live with it. What I'm saying is, there are now 3 different opinionated views on how people want to live in a society. 2 are very radical and are on the opposite sides, and 1 sounds radical but is actually in the middle. The first radical view, that as I've just said is getting slowly bigger, although didn't really get noticed by many, is the view that people don't want to live in a society, but instead want to live alone and probably not even in a country. The other radical view, which is the complete opposite, is that every person should be connected, deserves to be given a chance in life, to be social, to be accepted, to be forgiven, to be supported, and finally, and most importantly, is part of a society. Finally, the middle or centrist view in this case is that fuck shitty people, they're not part of our society, but good people deserve respect and would be accepted into our society. So this is what we're dealing with right now. In many arguments, daylight saving time would really help the social side of the spectrum, because one of the best things you could socially do is spend time with friends, outside, and sunlight is absolutely vital to that. Lonely people who are likely affected by technology, on the other hand, would not be as likely to want to spend time outside. I'm one of these lonely people. I would only spend time outside if it was possible for me to be alone, which for me is rare, considering I live in the biggest hellhole of humanity. But when I'm busy building my own empire in Avorion, I don't care if the sun is shining outside. The whole problem with this is that people force it for everyone, not just themselves. Once again, if you want more sunlight, change your schedule, not everyone's. If you want to make lonely people who don't care about sunlight to care about sunlight, then forcing everyone to already accept that they want more sunlight is not something you should start with. One other big factor about daylight saving time are the supposed energy savings, because people would not spend time inside turning on the lights, which is again hard to believe considering the argument I just provided about the growing lonely demographic. But maybe it's beneficial economically. Obviously, you probably shouldn't believe what I'm saying, since I'm probably not good at researching yet. I am making an opinion video for fuck's sake. But I have linked 4 studies talking about the impacts on energy consumption by daylight saving time, and 1 study discussing how energy consumption would change if daylight saving time would be extended and clocks wouldn't be switched anymore. All of these are in the description. The study's results are mixed. Some studies say energy consumption is lower, others say it's higher. It seems like the recorded energy savings or increased energy consumptions are completely random, at least for me. Most of the studies found that energy consumption change is less than 1%. And the one study that doesn't say it's less than 1% says it's at 1% and that the change can increase to only 2 to 4% in autumn. But that is not all about daylight saving time. Now we can finally talk about probably, in my opinion, the most annoying thing about daylight saving time. Every time zone on our planet has an abbreviation. The reason abbreviations exist is so that it's easy to convert from one time zone to another, and it's more and more important to be able to correctly convert from one time zone to another as more people appear on the internet and you meet more people from different countries, unless you're a xenophobe. I'm from Lithuania, and my standard time zone is Eastern European Time, or EET. The problem with daylight saving time is that any country that follows it creates or at least shares a unique and different time zone per year and switches back and forth during clock switches. Lithuania follows Eastern European Time normally, but then switches to Eastern European Summer Time, which is followed during the summer. EET has an offset from Coordinated Universal Time of +2, while EEST has an offset of +3. Now at this point you might say something, who cares about these? These time zones are the same. A summer time zone is the same as a standard time zone, and if we ignore it, everything should be fine. Well, you're wrong, man. Actually, I have two cases on why this attitude is bad. Let's say you're talking with someone who is from someplace you've never heard of before, and don't even have a clue about their time. But if that person follows daylight saving time, you don't, and then you ignore the daylight saving time as if everyone's offsets are equal, well, you'll calculate the time incorrectly. But even worse, and actually a bigger case against daylight saving time, is that not even everyone agrees when to follow it. This is actually perfectly demonstrated in the intro situation I've made for this video. The entire US and Canada decides to start following daylight saving time and stop following daylight saving time at a different time than, I don't know, the rest of the countries that even follow daylight saving time in the northern hemisphere in the first place? Why? Why do these disagreements have to just complicate normal everyday timekeeping like this? Longtime viewers of my channel probably know that I like to use Monster Cat music, and yes, I'm quite a Monster Cat fan. A long time ago, in 2014 and 2015, I used to watch the Monster Cat podcast live every single week. They live streamed a new podcast, most of which lasted 1 hour only, and I came around to listen with the Monster Cat community. Monster Cat is Canadian, and like the US, Canada also follows the daylight saving time while switching clocks at these weird times. Back when I listened to them every week, I had no idea that daylight saving time started at different times, so while nearly all the time, a new Monster Cat podcast episode aired at 23 o'clock my time, once per year, the Monster Cat podcast aired at 22 o'clock my time, which caused me to completely miss an episode. And once per year, the Monster Cat podcast aired at 0 o'clock my time, but on the next day compared to Canadian time. So thank you time zones on daylight saving time for fucking me straight in the ass. Maybe next time you'll not make my sleep deprivation when I'm still in so miserable. If you include Australia into the mix, who also follow daylight saving time, it gets even more ridiculous because they're on the southern hemisphere. They switch clocks at a different time and the offset changes are reversed. In April, they switch back. In October, they switched forward. But wait! Australia doesn't just switch clocks at unusual times, which complicates things. There's an island belonging to Australia that's located to the east of the mainland, called Lord Howe Island. This island switches clocks by 30 minutes. Lord Howe's standard time is UTC plus 10:30, while its daylight time is UTC plus 11. Now obviously there's a very low chance you'd speak with someone from there, but it just goes on to show how ridiculous the entire thing is. Maybe this is enough arguments against daylight saving time, but if you have arguments for daylight saving time, feel free to voice them in the comments below. In the meantime, I will eagerly await for 2020, because the EU voted to quit using daylight saving time for that year. so hopefully Lithuania isn't retarded enough to follow his advice. Thank you for watching.